Recovery Church Movement, Mitch Thompson, Recovery Church Delray Beach, Recovery Church Movement, bringing you the high five at 420 today. Super blessed to be with you, just coming out of the 4th of July holiday, reminded of how wonderful of a country we live in. We live in the greatest country on earth, the freest country on earth. We have so many freedoms. And so I want to talk about freedom today, but just because we live in this country and we have all these external freedoms doesn't mean we have internal freedom. See, I struggled with anxiety and fear and insecurity for much of my childhood into my adulthood. I was powerless over my insecurity and my anxiousness. I felt trapped. The Big Book has a stark reminder to my condition and all of our condition. Lack of power, that is our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live. It had to have been a power greater than to ourselves. Hey, do you struggle with anxiety, fear, shame, depression, loneliness, sadness, depression, worry? Do you have an internal angst that just won't go away? Well, I want to acknowledge that and say I'm sorry that you're experiencing that, first and foremost. Like, that breaks my heart. I've been there. God has freed me from much of that, but I get it, and it's painful, and I'm sorry. And even greater than that, Jesus understands. Jesus understands your pain and suffering. See, he lived on this earth. He went through the temptings that you and I did. He was crucified and beaten on our behalf. So he understands your pain and your suffering, and it breaks his heart that you go through it. See, it wasn't supposed to be like that. He didn't create this world to have sin. But because Adam and Eve chose to eat of that fruit, sin entered the world, and literally all hell broke loose. And now today we have disease and suffering and pain and addiction, and we struggle deeply. But Jesus has much to say about freedom. He wants us to experience internal freedom and joy. And so in John 8:31, he says, to the Jews who had believed in him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you are my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. A little later on, he talks about, so if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. This is the word of the Lord. In the midst of that, he talks about slavery. He talks about being enslaved. Anybody who's enslaved does not have freedom. And he's hinting to him. He's hinting to making us sons and daughters by trusting in his finished work. And when we do that, we find freedom. See, Jesus says we are to abide in his word. What does abiding in his word mean? Abiding in his word means to read his commands, to know what he said, to read the Bible, to comprehend it, to obey it, to bring it into every area of our lives, to live under the lordship of Jesus Christ. It sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it? But here's the deal. We only carve out and make time for things that we value. And so if I followed you around for the day, and I saw where you spent your money and spent your time, I would see what you value. You got to really ask yourself, do you value Jesus? Because if you really value Jesus and his ultimate sacrifice for you, then you will spend time with him. And so I want to encourage you today to be a disciple of Jesus. What is a disciple of Jesus? Disciple of Jesus is someone who follows and obeys Jesus and teaches others to do the same. Jesus calls us to be his disciples, to listen to what he says, to obey what he says. Then true freedom can be found. We can get rid of that internal angst. We can live with what the Bible calls the fruit of the Spirit, Paul talks about in Galatians. We can live with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, goodness, and self-control. These things can mark our life. See, Jesus wants to rule and reign in your life. We got to obey him. And the good news happens by trusting and believing in the gospel of Jesus Christ. That, see, we were rebels. We are rebels. We have sinned against God in our word, thoughts, and deeds. Because of that, he has to punish us. It's eternal separation from all that is good, here now on a physical earth and then forever in eternity. And there's nothing we can do about it. We are destined to be separated from him. No amount of good works counts. But God the Father, in his great love for us, sent God the Son, Jesus, on a rescue mission that we might believe in him. He always did what is right. He never sinned. He went to a cross on our behalf. He was crucified, died a horrible, gruesome death, but in 3 days arose, overcoming sin and death on our behalf. And if we put our trust and faith in Jesus and in that finished work, he says he gives us his Spirit. And so we don't just get joy and peace, we get Jesus, who is the epitome of joy and peace. He chooses to reside in us through his Holy Spirit and guide and lead our life. Tim Keller says this: true freedom is not the absence of constraints, but rather the choice of liberating constraints. We are always bound to something. In other words, true freedom isn't getting to do whatever you want whenever you want. See, I used to do that, and in fact, I lost my freedom by doing that. I went to jail. We become institutionalized, right? That is not true freedom. True freedom is actually having the right constraints in our life. What are those right constraints? It's the 12 steps and is following Jesus. I would add to that some self-care, right? Sleeping good at night, taking care of our bodies, not eating sugar, minimizing processed food, exercising regular. These things, along with following Jesus and being a disciple of Jesus, you will experience freedom. But you must submit to the lordship of Jesus in your life. You must obey him in every area of your life. And so I want to encourage you today to make that commitment to allowing him to be the Lord of your life so that you will experience true internal freedom. Recovery Church, I love you, and I pray that you would today start experiencing more freedom than yesterday, that each day you would exponentially experience more freedom because of what Christ has done for you and you allowing his Spirit to lead and guide your life. God bless you. Stay sober. Have a wonderful day.